Every morning at Balmoral Castle, maids bow, not to the king, not to the queen, but to empty rooms. That's right. If a royal just left, the staff still curtsy to the vacant space. A tradition over 150 years old, never changed, and that's just the beginning. Vacuum cleaners, banned, carpet scrubbed on hands and knees, shifts running 15 to 18 hours a day, pay often below minimum wage, but hidden inside this Scottish fairy tale castle, there's a darker story, one that made dozens of staff walk out overnight. It all began not with Parliament, not with advisors, but with a newspaper. One rainy morning in 1852, Prince Albert's eyes caught a property ad, an old Scottish estate, far away from London, wild, lonely, whispering freedom. Albert didn't ask permission, didn't even tell Queen Victoria. He wired £32,000, that's $4.4 million today, and bought it in secret. When Victoria found out, she wasn't angry, she was enchanted. The Highlands reminded her of childhood fairy tales. But Albert wasn't satisfied with a crumbling estate. He had a vision. The old house was torn down. By 1856, a new granite fortress rose, his masterpiece. Albert wasn't just a prince, he became the architect. Sketching clock towers, choosing stone that shimmered white against the green hills, designing windows to flood the halls with Highland light. And here's the detail that still stuns historians. Albert had the faces of his 9 children carved into the stonework, a family literally etched into the walls. But Balmoral wasn't just a castle. It was an empire within an empire. 53,000 acres of wilderness, 150 buildings, its own electricity before many towns had power, and in 1866, a private 3-mile railway, built not for passengers, but for royal luggage. And here's the twist that makes Balmoral unique even today. It's not owned by the crown, not by the nation, it's owned by the family personally. So every penny from its cottages, deer hunts, and holiday lets, straight into royal pockets. Politicians grumbled, critics complained. But Edward VII brushed them aside, calling Balmoral the family's inescapable refuge. From that moment on, Balmoral wasn't just a castle. It was the royals' ultimate stage for privacy and secrets. From the outside, Balmoral looks like a fairy tale. Glittering granite, majestic turrets, a Disney dream in the Highlands. Step inside, and the dream changes. Every hallway was designed with Albert's obsession for order. Corridors were built deliberately narrow. Why? So no royal could dodge another. They'd be forced to bump into each other. Family closeness. By architecture. Even the clock tower hides a quirk. Albert tuned the bells to E flat, not for beauty, but so the sound wouldn't frighten the royal ponies. And then came the rules. Rules that turned Balmoral from a home into a theater of discipline. Every morning, precisely at 7 a.m., a lone bagpiper stands beneath the monarch's window. Rain, frost, or fog. The pipes play. A ritual as inescapable as the sunrise. Every September, the Gillies Ball transforms the castle into a grand hall of reels and jigs. Servants and royals dance side by side. But even here, hierarchy whispers. Invitations with golden trim go to favored staff. Plain cards to the rest. At midnight, the royals slip away, and every head bows in silence as they leave. For staff, silence was survival. Maids signed lifelong secrecy vows. Speak without being spoken to? Fired. Repeat a private conversation? Gone. Even today, cameras are banned, windows covered, drones blocked by high-tech sky fences. One maid described it best. Balmoral looks like a dream on the outside. Inside, it's quieter than a library. Not out of respect, but out of fear. The castle sparkles on the outside, but inside the shine comes at a cost. For the maids of Balmoral, Every day begins before sunrise. The alarm doesn't wake them. The cold does. Attic rooms drop to just 4 degrees at night. Breath frosting on the windows. No heating. No comfort. By 6 a.m., they're polishing 200 pieces of silver in the oldest kitchen. The air smells of polish, soot, and damp stone. By 8, breakfast is served. Then comes the endless march of kettles, trays, and boots along narrow corridors. Lunch isn't a meal. It's 18 kilos of potatoes peeled in silence, uniforms swapped, aprons rinsed twice a day because the dust is so thick from horsehair brushes scraping the carpets. Vacuum cleaners? Outlawed. The Queen hated the sound. So, 2 maids crawl on their knees, pushing tiny horsehair brushes across endless rugs. One hallway takes 45 minutes. Every day. The toll is brutal. Wrists swell. Fingers ache so badly, some can't even grip a spoon to eat their own supper. But complaining? Not an option. Wages are barely enough to survive. In the 1980s, a first-year housemaid earned $18,000, about $4,000 above the average worker. But she worked double the hours, and men, like the gamekeepers, earned more. Always. The strangest rule of all, the curtsy to ghosts. If a royal leaves a room and a maid enters minutes later, she must still bow, not to a person, but to the space where a royal once stood. During the 1987 Gillies Ball, staff curtsied 61 times in one night. Their knees bruised so badly, bandages were handed out with serving trays. One maid whispered it felt like serving shadows. Perfect rugs, sparkling silver, crackling fires. But beneath it all, quiet pain. The kind no one outside those walls was ever supposed to see. For decades, Balmoral's silence was absolute. But in 1988, it shattered. The whistleblower wasn't a politician, not a rival, just a maid. She had lasted barely 8 weeks in the castle. But what she carried out with her wasn't luggage, it was secrets. And when she sold them, she earned more in one scoop than 8 years of service. It was betrayal wrapped in gold. Her stories hit like an earthquake. Suddenly, the royal family's most private sanctuary was splashed across tabloids worldwide. Some stories were surprisingly tender, like the dinner guest who drank rose-scented finger water, thinking it was soup. Instead of shaming him, the Queen raised her own bowl. So did the family. 17 bowls sipped in solidarity. A quiet act of compassion no speech could match, but others cut deeper. She painted Margaret Thatcher's 1987 stay as icy. The Prime Minister wasn't in the castle, but exiled to a far-off cottage nicknamed Siberia. The palace denied it instantly, but Thatcher skipped the next morning's hunt, and whispers turned into headlines. The maid also revealed snapshots of Charles and Diana. Charles quietly fetching Diana's coat before a picnic. Diana slipping tips to stable boys when no one was looking. Small rebellions of kindness that made them look more like love-struck teenagers than royals. But behind the sweetness was pressure. Prince Philip grilling staff at dinners with questions like a game show host. Some laughed. Diana? She called it suffocating, like living under a microscope. The palace's fury was instant. They called it a gross betrayal of trust. Background checks were doubled. New hires forced to sign airtight secrecy contracts tied to the Official Secrets Act. Translation? Speak, and your career, and your bank account, were finished. But the damage was already done. For the first time, Balmoral's perfect silence had cracked, and the world realized even in a palace, whispers can become weapons. Fast forward to now, and the cracks aren't whispers anymore. They're earthquakes. Between 2024 and 2025, Balmoral and the wider royal estates faced a staffing crisis, not from scandal in the press, but from revolt within. At Highgrove, Charles's beloved gardens looked picture perfect. 15 acres of themed flower beds, visited by 40,000 people a year. But behind the beauty, pure exhaustion. Gardeners pulled 60-hour weeks, for just $22,000 a year. That's about $7.25 an hour after tax. Hauling wheelbarrows of compost so heavy, one worker tore his shoulder. No sick pay, just basic benefits. 9 days later, nearly the entire team walked out together, and Balmoral wasn't any better. In March 2024, a maid posted a review online calling the management toxic. Supervisors yelling in front of guests, breaks docked as punishment, overtime hours unpaid. Her wage? $10.90 an hour, almost 60% below the UK's real living wage. Other staff backed her up. One said she had to clean 12 royal suites before lunch or lose her break. Another claimed missing a single speck of dust meant punishment. Then came the viral story of Heather Glenn. Her mother was going into surgery. Heather begged for leave. She had used only 2 of her 10 days that year, but her request was denied. Why? She was needed to starch Princess Kate's linens. Heather quit on the spot. Screenshots of her emails went viral. Over 11,000 comments poured in. And suddenly, Balmoral's fairy tale shine was trending for all the wrong reasons. By August 2025, it all boiled over. Storm floors ripped across Scotland. But Balmoral's gates didn't close because of the wind. They closed because 2/3 of the staff had walked out the night before. Maids refusing to sleep on broken floors. Gardeners refusing to haul compost until their wrists gave out. Thousands of tourists were turned away. For the first time since the 2001 foot and mouth crisis, Balmoral was closed. The palace scrambled, quietly bringing in temporary workers. And here's the kicker. Those temps earned $19 an hour, nearly double what the loyal staff had been making. It exposed the truth. The royal family's most treasured retreat was cracking, not because of storms, but because the silence of its workers had finally turned into a roar. For over 170 years, Balmoral has been more than a castle. It's been a stage where the royals laughed, fought, and mourned, all behind walls built to keep the world out. From Albert's secret purchase, to Diana's whispered struggles, to modern walkouts shaking the very foundations, Balmoral has carried one theme through every era: silence. The silence of staff who scrubbed their hands raw and never spoke. The silence of guests who endured traditions too strange to question. The silence of a family that hides its cracks behind granite walls. But now, that silence is breaking. Leaks, walkouts, and viral stories are pulling back the curtain, and the world is asking, is Balmoral still a sanctuary, or has it become a symbol of the monarchy's most fragile secrets? One thing's for sure, the truth inside those stone walls is far messier than the fairy tale outside, and if you've made it this far, you already know there's more to this story than the palace ever admits. So here's my question for you. Do you think Balmoral is still the royal family's safe haven, or is it slowly becoming their biggest liability? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. And if you love uncovering the untold stories behind the crown, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next secret might just be bigger than this one. The silence of Balmoral may be ending, but the conversation? That starts with you.